want to thank you guys for stopping by here. The creative process, if you've taken from me before, I'm always heavy on the creative process. Uh, and through these sets of slides, you'll see a lot of my work. You'll see other people's work, some of my students' work, whatever fit in that particular category I'm doing. If I do pick a student's work, it has nothing to do with that's better than another student. It has to do that that fits into what I'm trying to do. Okay? So the creative process, what does that all mean? Is if I want to get my watercolors out and put an orange and some green things around it and paint that, is that a creative process? Yes, it is. Those are creative ideas. You took the orange, put it out, you put the green stuff. You had a reason for the green stuff, you had a reason for the oranges, and that is the creative process. But when you talk about art and then you talk about art with the big A, the concept becomes very, very much an important part of that. Okay. Now we've all gone through that part of it where you start up a piece and it's going and then it gets harder and then you go through the ugly stages and then you doubt your whole reason for being on this planet. And then all of a sudden, oh, this might be okay. And all of a sudden, boom, it is different, obviously. Now, here's one of the things that I thought about a long time ago. What makes a piece of art? You have the artist, and some people don't show their art. They just want to make their art and put it at home. Well, it's like playing solitaire a little bit because art is the act of communicating something. And when your work hangs in a gallery or someday a museum or a cafe, it begs to be communicated with. It begs for the viewer to check it out and translate it in their own way, which is different than your way. Or you hope to it's somewhat different your way. And if that happens for that moment, you've created art. You've done that communication that's so important as an artist.
Armin,
Uh,
Armin,
yeah.
just one thought here. Um, your share screen. Did everybody else lose his share screen?
Uh, I just I just see his face.
Armin, just see his face. Okay. So why don't you share your screen one more time, Armin? I think when we rebooted it, yeah,
Oh, I have to unscreen it.
you have to share screen. There we go. Here we go.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
So that whole thing with the creativity being shit didn't come on.
Why don't you flip back to it? We're fine.
Don't do anything with me. Just leave me a little box. I'm fine.
Okay, you got it.
We saw the one with the shit, Armin.
Oh, thank
Thank
you, Cindy.
God.
Okay,
Woo.
with the calligraphy written, correct?
Yes,
Right,
yes,
right.
that's the
Saw
one.
that shit.
All right. Well,
Thank
I
you.
don't know if you saw this with the artist where you actually work in a with another person, and that's the viewer. You're always working with that other person. That other person is not telling you what to do. That other person isn't telling you, hey, I need more green in it. That other person sees it for the first time. And guess what? You never see your art for the first time. Never. So, unless you use AI, but we won't talk about AI. Okay. Don't ask me about it ever. So the artist is part of this. The viewer then likes it, it feels it, it understands it in their own way, and art is made. You can mimic a result, but not creativity. And here's where I'm going to say one thing about AI. It's not creative. It does not do creativity. Only you can do creativity. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Um, you could go on and paint somebody else's painting. You can go on and in the history books and paint somebody else's painting. It's an exercise. Before there was the internet and all that stuff, people used to go to museums and paint all the time. And that was a way of learning. This is the biggest part of what I'm going to talk about here is concept design, craft, and presentation. And we're offering a class called the creative concept, and this is where it comes in. So the first thing is concept. That concept should be something that's not, well, I like that. I like that still life. I'm going to do a still life like that. And I'm only saying that if you want to create the art with the big A. I want to do something that I haven't seen. Oh, I'm so influenced by so and so or so and so. That's fantastic. Now take that influence, break it down. What does it about it does it influence you, and change it. That's the concept. That's where it all starts. Design. Yes, you have to understand design. You have to understand those kinds of things. But once you understand them, composition, it's time to try breaking those rules. If you went to a class and you took design class and you talk about the golden mean, they talk about the rules of thirds, all these kinds of things. They're for you, they're rules for you to break successfully. How can I? If everything's always in the, top left area, that's fine. That's where people look right away, and that's good. If it's in the bottom right, they search the piece more and then find the focal point. Then there is the craft, right? This is what you do. You're a painter, you're a draughtsman, you sculpt, whatever you do watercolor, which is much harder than sculpting. And that's what you do, but that's the craft of making art. That's not the art. Now, if this was right here, this piece I just came up, does it have design? Yes. Does it have concept? Yes. Not strong enough to put it over the top. And there is presentation. This is actually Michelle Courier, who's a friend of mine. I nabbed her piece because she does these nice presentations. So this is the real thing about concept, design, craft, and presentation. More about presentation. If you're an artist, you want to be a professional person. You don't want to just sit there and let somebody find your art somewhere. You have to go to museums and all that kind of stuff. Granted, some of you people might not want that, but that's not who I'm really talking to. I'm talking about people that want to show and communicate their message, that want to talk to people about your art. And when you get into a show, the first one is one of Val. She got into a show. And the other one is one of mine that I got in show. And I put that on Facebook, Instagram, and those kinds of things. It's important not to only make art and be an artist, but to also share that message with people. That is so important to do. Okay. One of the biggest things I say in this class would be what if? Those of you who've taken my classes, what if is always the key point. During a critique, we say, well, what if you did this? Or what if you did this? That doesn't mean you should. That means, have you thought about it? And with some classes, I work with Photoshop and I actually can show you what I mean. I can move things over. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if you're an abstractionist and you paint the way you're looking at it, turn it around in midstream, turn it upside down midstream. If you get used to it one way, you'll never get out of that. It's always going to look upside down to you. What if, this is one of my drawings, graphite, what if you took this which is this beautiful, you can tell this was the artist was there. You can tell the emotion of the artist was there. You can tell those strokes. It's an extremely powerful a rendering and composition. It's beautiful. I love it. Well, I spent many, many hours on this piece. Why would I? Because there's a certain sense of me understanding every branch and every shadow. I want to walk through that landscape with my eyes. I want to see every little bump. I want to see every little branch and question myself, why is that shadow going that way? Or why is that shadow going this way? I get the same thing with some people. Well, why don't you just take a photograph? And I explained that to him because I'm a photographer. It's very much like a poem. It's about the feeling of the place. I want to write the novel. I want to know everything about the place. And I cannot get that from a photo alone. Or what if you go this way? Powerful, extremely powerful. Uh, to me, I think this is a wonderful drawing. I like it. But there's a power of what's not said here than what is said here. And I think that's extremely important. And let's say this, I am not, through all this thing, I'm not saying I like one thing more than the other. I'm able to like a lot of different things. Somebody says, well, what's the best song you've ever heard? That's a ridiculous question. Of course I know which one. No, I don't. All right, let's talk one about mood, intent. And this is some of the things that I get a bit where, your work seems to be very dark, and then I don't ever look at it that way. And a lot of people don't. But I drew what was around me, and I love the compositions, as weaving of telephone poles. It goes deeper than the one on the right. The one on the right, I would see in a hospital or a restaurant or so. I hope I'm not uh, bringing this piece down. It's just a fact of it. This would not be in a hospital or a restaurant. So what was I getting after? I said, well, that telephone pole, all those knots and all those things, people never look at it. I want to make art that people look at and say, I have never seen that before. Have I seen these types of trees painted in this way? Many, many, many times. Could I do it? I don't know. I haven't not tried, but I probably could. But that's not where I'm at. If anyone has questions, you can, Val, they can. Val, are you around?
Yes, I am,
Oh,
Armin. Sure, they can put them right in the chat, and then we'll open it up to questions after your PowerPoint and bring
okay.
everybody back into the gallery. You kind of like that personal touch that way. So,
I do. I do.
okay, we will do that at the end.
I teach a class called hyphenography. It's a class that I've taught really for about 10, 11 years. Started off at the Midland Center for the Arts when I ran the school there. And when I first got an iPhone, and I didn't want an iPhone. To me, having a camera on a phone is like having a toaster on a snow shovel, you know. It just didn't make any sense to me at the time. Well, soon after that, Val got one. I guess I had to get one. We were walking to the studio and I saw this rusted wall and I took a picture of it and I said, that's why. And everything opened up for me. So I'm talking, I have a few, 5 or 6 of these screens where it's a theme. When I teach the creative process class, we work from a theme or an idea. This theme is generations. The first one is mine. That's how I interpret generation, with these ghost-like figures in the back, and this crow, which has a meaning, and the ladders have a meaning. Ghislaine LaValle simplified that and took a phone as a generation because we now have the iPhone. And there's Steve Parker's who did these little ties and made them almost into symbolic kind of figures. That is so creative, right? This isn't like any other class, photo class, you wouldn't do this.
Armin, I do have a question. Okay. I have a question in the chat, and it could pertain to these three images I'm feeling. How do you decide that something is powerful? And then they said, for example, the knife, or, what is powerful in each one of these images?
Well, I chose these images for this generation. There was other images from other people that were horizontal. Couldn't choose those, right? So everything in this iconography class is fantastic. We've been together for so long. We know each other's language, but we're not afraid to change. Powerful here, I think, is that it's somewhat vague, that you have to try to figure out what does a crow mean to you? What does a cross mean to you? Or what do you see that I don't in this particular piece? Galen's piece has been about, oh, generations, how things changed. And that's the symbol for it. And her great composition. And Steve just taking these little things and making symbols out of them. That's powerful, right? It's just to take the simplest thing that's around you and create a whole story of it. And I hope that answers that question. Now, here's a drawing I did of a friend of mine and mentor, Larry Butcher. I did this about 25 years ago. I was very happy with it. So let's go through the process. Uh, Concept. Did it have a great concept? No. It had a concept like you do with every other portrait. You want to make it look good. You want to get this. You want to get the likeness and all those kinds of stuff. It has an okay uh, concept, but it's very much like other people do. Design. It has a good design because I decided to bring him into the shadow in here and bring him back out. Presentation, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sorry, craft matters. It's a drawing technique that I've been developing for 60 years, which is weird because I'm only 45. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so then I saw this. I said, "Oh my God, this beats me in concept all the way through, where the art, big A art is in the concept of it, right? Composition, fine. Craft, wonderful presentation, but it's in the concept that this one blows the other one away. If you don't take into account, I wanted to do a drawing of a good friend of mine. Hey, that wouldn't have worked on this side of those images. But see how wonderful it is to take this and just let your inhibitions go away. Just what if, what if, what if? Different approaches. No, it's a drawing of a cat. First one is one of my drawings of a cat, and there's somebody else's drawing of a cat. If I have the name of the person, I put it in there. If I don't, I don't. So my idea of drawing, this was actually when COVID started, and I couldn't go anywhere. So I had this photo of a cat I took in an art supply store in Cincinnati, and I went under the name of this damn cat for many, many, many months. And what I want to do is capture that class and really understand and capture bokeh or the softness of it. So that's part of the concept to create it like that, understand it like that. And believe me, I studied about cats, I studied their eyes. That is part of the concept. The design it's good for what it is. It's in the rules of design. Uh, in the craft, the technique of drawing, it's pretty damn good drawing. And presentation, we don't have to worry about that in this point. The other one, concept. The concept is to create a cat with feeling without worrying about all those details. But to bring forward, I'm looking at this cat and I'm just going to draw it, and boom, it comes out. You feel the touch of the artist in here, right? Design, it's fine. The craft, the person, a good contour drawer, a good sketcher, and there you go. Different approaches, right? This is a long form drawing class that I teach through the Atelier in Detroit. Both of these drawers, or which they're actually called as draftsmen, not draftsmen, but draftsmen, approach it completely different. Annie was doing this drawing, and when she showed it in class, it was kind of like this. And we suggested, what if you left it like that and not go on farther? And that brings a certain kind of power to it. That decision is part of that creative process and somewhat in the design process. Karen's piece is haunting. You have to figure out what happens here. She's not telling you, she's telling you to start your creative process, right? And you can make a million things out of that. Concept is strong, design is strong. It all works in all cylinders. Both do, but you got to find that, understand there's different approaches to this. This is a drawing I did that's fairly large. And I went on a 1-year residency in Cincinnati to Manifest Drawing Center and drew this. It took a year. And why in the hell would you draw something like this? Where's this going to go? Well, I'm not concerned about that. I've never been concerned about who's going to buy my work or for why, or do I do something to win art prize, or do I do any of these things. I looked at this area and walked around and I said, my God, this is amazing abstraction. And it would be wonderful to draw. Um, After it got done, there was 250,000 pebbles in this thing. How do I know that? I took an average area and multiplied that. I didn't count all of them. But for me, this is a great achievement in the art of abstraction and the art of realism. And this is, and like Jason Franz, who's the head of that place, says this is more for museum piece. And I haven't found the person yet that said, "Oh, I'd like to have a big drawing of cement in my living room." It's not going to work that way. And here you can see kind of the design. This was in the show. And people are probably saying, why the hell did he draw this? These are a couple of slides of my art where I think it hit on all cylinders. Dragon's Tail, I started off in that little rectangle and did automatic drawing. I had no idea what I was going to draw. I just started moving the pencil around. And I wanted to it was on very smooth paper. I wanted to get detail on it. And at some point I saw this kind of wing shape. I brought that out a little bit, and this wood shape came out of it, and these floating orbs that are in it. But it still wasn't guided to somebody with a message. This has no message. It has uh, a title called Dragon Tail, which is the wood that comes out of that. And here's something that I hope everybody has: an artistic partner in their life, somebody they trust and they can talk to, and that will give you, good information and sometimes not good information. And as this was going down, this kind of just came down straight. And Val said, and this is a compositional thing, what if that line came around, that pop, boom, it made the piece, right? Remember that, Val?
Yep, sure do.
Okay. So It's a small piece. I was extremely happy with this. Maybe one of my favorite pieces to actually, when you draw, this was a discovery. This wasn't, I'm going to draw this like the trees or something else. The other one called Sticks and Stones is something that I actually set up on a table in front of my drawing table. I put sticks, stones, pieces of wood swept up from the driveway and put them in glass. Is it beautiful? I don't know. A flower is beautiful. And why is a flower more beautiful than this? You know, the refraction, the transparency, the way it's distorted, the bubbles that are in some. What happens to glass behind another piece of glass and the shadow? Was a wonderful drawing of discovery, completely different than Dragon's Tale because I had no idea where I was going. The other one, I knew where I was going, but how was I going to get there? So I think they're both strong pieces. Here we have another theme. This was our last class of our iconography group, and the theme was details, right? And so 2 weeks later, we do these every 2 weeks. I would put a PowerPoint together of 3 pieces of each person, and these are 3 of those things. Steve Parker's piece with the flowers on it. Amazing how he isolates those flowers and this kind of chair shape, what it is to me, just looks like it's brushed on. There's a lot of vagueness to it, and there's a lot of power of what it could be, right? This goes in both worlds. It's both abstract, it's both realistic. It's surreal and it's not surreal. It hits a lot of these different points. And then you have Cindy Bancroft, who did this abstraction piece with iconography. Those of you who don't understand iconography, it's creating art with an iPhone and stacks, building your image and not using AI or some of those things, and not doing it on the computer either. You can use your iPad. It makes you, for all these people, it really, if there's anything that came across these people, in my mind, and I had one of the students here, is that how important abstraction is in all art, not just in abstraction itself, but in composition and moving things around in a different way. And that's her piece right there. And Galen LaValle took a photo of forgot what this was, a scarf. And just the way she isolated it. We know what it is. It is an apt, which means a bunch of different apt, but it's the way it's arranged that makes this so powerful. And the black and the red. All right. This is where you can go if you use what if. Okay, now I'm going to go back to me a little bit in the sense of Gabriella was a drawing I did about 6, 7 years ago, and it won third at Art Prize. And that's the kind of work I was doing at the time. I was a portrait artist in Chicago for 2 or 3 years, which I hated because I had no choice in the matter. And then I started working on portraits I wanted to work on. And I was a very realistic drawer and known for that type of drawing. And I think it's a wonderful portrait. I like it a lot. I always like this piece. But I shifted to this abstraction piece called Stratum Oil on Canvas. Is it a shift? Or is it something that was always in me? And it's something that was always in me. When I got out of school, I wanted to be an abstractionist, but at that time I didn't have the understanding. Just because I like something doesn't mean you can do it. I was all into Franz Klein and Jasper Johns and all these kinds of things, but it wasn't my language. I fooled around with that for a while and I said, this isn't going to work this way. I have to put that abstraction into my realism. And I did. But I've always wanted to go back to just abstraction. It started with iconography. With iconography, I wouldn't have had a chance. Started with iconography, and now I have a piece that I didn't plan out. That I had to start making different marks, and I had to think a lot about composition on here. Uh, the beginning of the stage it doesn't end that way. And I've been working on it for a year. I have worked in abstraction with graphite too, so I understand the process a bit. Which one is more fulfilling? It isn't. There's no one. One hits one side of me, and the other one hits a completely other side of me. Abstract drawing and oil painting. The one on the left is an abstract drawing. Again, I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't have any idea. I just started drawing, period. And thinking a lot about design. Design was the concept was I want to do something abstract. The design part was then that the animal that I had a rope. How am I going to get a design out of this? And then putting little flicks of realism. There's a couple of numbers here that mean nothing. They're there for design elements. And then there's an abstract painting that I did about 6 months ago, which is a completely different type of process, and even in drawing. Well, people ask me sometimes, well, when I look at this, I say to myself, well, this is much more about this than the wood and all those. You can see telltales what happened. This piece of wood fell down, and you see the scratch that still happens. This is about observation. This is about the skill of observation. Observation is a skill. We don't have it unless we hone that skill. But that doesn't mean every artist walks around with that skill all the time. You know, I mean, Val might get a new piece of furniture and I didn't know it was there, you know. But you do put that hat on. And I saw this and I said, I want to draw this. I love these diagonals. And so here's the way I saw it. This was exactly how I saw it before I started drawing it. Right? So it went from this really to this. Right? And that excited me about drawing that piece. What if I went farther? What if it turned into an abstraction? That's it. This is realism to abstraction, or why I chose a particular realistic drawing I wanted to draw. This is a different iPhone class I teach. This is the intermediate one, and the theme was color. Kathy Johnson, Keith Dant, and Kevin Bone. Right. They certainly got color out of that. The hardest thing, and Cindy, who I see over there, would know that because she's in the iPhone class, is just an open class saying, "Hey, do whatever you want to do." Sometimes that class is important. We played with it, but it wasn't very successful. It's the class, we meet every 2 weeks. I say, your theme for next week is color. And I think all of them really excelled at this. The mystery of this one, looking at this moon shape, this vortex of numbers, even how she did it. I still don't remember how she did it. And then this capture of bubbles, and then going over it again with more bubbles, what's called app stacking, image stacking, going over and erasing things. There's a series I'm doing, and I've been doing this for 4 years. It's called An Evening of Magical Thinking. And it goes back to when I was a child and living with my grandparents and looking at books of Arthur Rackham and these turn of the century illustrators. And for me, it's an evening of magical thinking. Now, with iconography, this can happen quick or it can take 30 hours, whatever, but it doesn't take 500 hours. So I wanted this magical feeling. I didn't want to, it doesn't say anything except that. And it's an ongoing series. This is 15. They're both 15. They can't be. One of them must be 14. All right, let's go back to this again. These are two different drawings of trees, two different approaches. I find them both exciting. And I'm gonna say that about my own piece because I can't play, oh, that'll piece. I have to be honest. I think it's a great capture, it's a great composition, all that kind of thing. But why do I think the other one is great? Because it's part of the moment. It's part of just getting out there and having the artistic, you know, movement and feeling that comes across from that. You know, you can tell it was done fast, and that's fine. The other one was not done so fast. But what I was interested in is all these little things with the trees. I traveled to every tiny little mark, every tiny little thing. You know, the way the light actually this fades from where the negative areas in this bottom part is the dark areas, and the negative areas on the top is the light areas. You know, and this is, you know, in a way, this is part science, I would think. You know, how does that branch come out of that? How does this fold and why does it fold? You know, you have to have a certain kind of knowledge of it. Trees have always been interesting to me, and I've done them with a lot of different kinds of things. I was I lived in Chicago at the time, and I was managing Goods of Evanston, which was a big frame store. I managed the framing side of it, and somebody else managed the art supplies side of it. And Ampersand, who were just coming out with this product called Clayboard, they asked me to do something on their Clayboard. This is only 3 by 4 inches, and I'm talking about this particular piece right here, right? And of course, what am I going to do with that? And I started a whole new way of thinking. I drew on it, but then went in with a sander and sanded half the drawing back out. I started transposing colors. Composition is really important here, you know. Um, but the concept to do all that and take the drawing back out, that is a really what if moment, right? And then go back to for 20, 30 years later, I did one called Winter's Dream 2, which was on my phonography. But the way I did this was maybe more time consuming than this. I'm sure this one took a lot more time than this one did. Because I had to put different images and then slowly erase outside of what those images are and make them anew again. Uh, so it has a little bit of that magic thing. I use Half Moon a lot. There was an incident when I was a little kid growing up in post-war Germany where we lived, my grandparents, I lived in this little apartment, and the electricity was here and there. It was all bombed out buildings. And I pointed to the moon. I was about a year old, and I said, "Good moon." I said that to my opa. And for that reason, I use the moon. It's a magical symbol for me. It means a lot of different things in you know, personal symbolism and then in universal symbolism too. Symbolism is another thing I talk a lot about in my classes. And then I drew this called Broken Patterns. Um, and in some ways, it was the greatest experience I've ever had to draw this. And again, it took about 1,500 hours. and it was all about. So after it snowed, snowstorm, I would go, and at that time the iPhone, the camera wasn't that great, so I would take it with me so I could take quick snapshots of it. So I have a lot of things from references. And then once I saw those, I got my real camera. It's not called that way anymore, but my digital camera at the time, which was a Sony, I took photos of what I liked from my iPhone and details of those. And then when I put it together, I changed it quite a bit from the reference photos. I used 4 or 5 or 6 different reference photos. This, if you look at this white line, it wasn't none of them, but they had to be there. It had to be there composition wise. So I change things even now when I do these kinds of things. And Miller's Field is still a tree painting, although it's abstract. For me, that feeling still comes into it. And that's oil on clapboard. Theme, the unfamiliar. Julie Close, Nancy Brooks Siebert, and Elizabeth Sullivan. The unfamiliar, what a great theme that was, right? And this is way. And then you can see in Nancy's how she took all these squares and put them together to make an image. Fantastic work. Okay, I'm just going to touch on this a little bit.
Oh, Armin, before you shift gears, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay, first off, because you're talking about the trees, did you photograph the trees first, then draw them? Are any of your drawings from plein air?
No, none of them are plein air because of the time it took, and this is 1,500 hours, and it'd be a long time to hang out in the woods because there's spiders and stuff.
Mhm.
And so to get that kind of information from plein air is almost impossible unless you go back to some of these. Is it on here? That one on the one on the left. That's the
Right.
kind of information I can get from that.
Okay, and also, let's see here. Is iPhotography now considered an acceptable form of art to submit to exhibitions?
Yeah, all it is photo collage, photo montage, which has been around for a long time. Um, is it acceptable? Well, I've never not gotten a show because it was not acceptable
Mhm.
with those. Um, Photo montage started off, in the 1890s, where they're placing other things with darkroom technique. It's not AI. Nobody is making these images for me. I am making those images. With every part of it is my decision. I want this there. I'm going to erase of it, but I just want that little square there.
Okay.
Everything I do is my creative process, nothing
Hmm.
else. They do have a problem with AI because you can back check AI. And if
Hmm.
it's more than 40% AI, they might not take it. But I don't want to get into that. But
Hmm.
AI
Good
is a
point.
different animal, that's all.
Right. And then also another this artist so far has been working off reference photos taken by others, but I want to get a camera to take my own. Any tips on taking your own references, specifically of trees, and camera recommendations if you have one?
Well, since I have an iPhone 16 right now, I'm at a point right now where I have a mirrorless camera that has 48 or 54 megapixels on it. I hardly use that camera anymore. I
Hmm.
think the iPhone now is as good as possible. If you're in the entry level, any of the companies, Sony or Canon, uh, don't get one where you have to have to change lenses and all that kind of stuff, unless you really want to get into photography. But then you better take some photography classes because the mechanics of that is very serious stuff. If you want something easy, get an iPhone.
Did you see this is just me talking now, but did you see a big difference when you switched from the 14 to the 16 with your iPhone
I
photography?
switched from the 12 to the 16.
12 to the 16, okay.
Uh, Not enough to really make it worth it, but yes,
Yeah, you
for
did
me
see a,
teaching that guy, there's some fine things. I
sure.
think, I think from 10 up, I think they're still good. They're going to stop supporting the hardware, and you might not get as crisp of a piece.
Mhm.
So, if
Okay.
I was just buying an iPhone now and I want to spend I get an iPhone 12.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
But if you want the bells and whistles, it's
Go for
16.
it. Okay. All
All
right,
right.
carry on.
Political and social art isn't new. It's been there for a long time. It's about speaking about what's around you. Now, I understand many people don't want to confront it. They want to escape from it. And they want to go in that sanctuary where all this stuff isn't happening. I understand that fully. But with my history, I was born in Germany, moved here when I was 7, lived among those ruins. I have to follow my German social political artists such as Otto Dix here, right? There's a lot of crap happening in the 30s in the war, and both my grandparents and parents went through that. And some of these people, like Otto Dix, this was from the First World War, Max Beckmann. These are not beautiful pieces. They're not meant to be beautiful pieces. They're meant to express yourself. They're meant to say something. They tell a story. Guernica. It's about bombardment of the small city. Some of you might know the name of it. I don't remember. Well, maybe that is Guernica. But anyway, this screaming horse. I mean, you see this death all over the place. Val told me a story just the other day. There was what was that story down about the Amish? There was an Amish cart.
Oh, it was very sad, yes.
Well, but the horse
In the
died,
scheme of things, yes.
right?
The schemes of
And
Gornica, it wasn't war related at all. It was strictly an accident. But just
yeah,
the imagery that it conjures up, it's just
yeah,
horrific.
yeah. So more than just wanting to be social politica, I feel like I have to do it for what happened then and what's happening now. And of course, the great Kate Kolwitz. Uh, if you like political art or not, if this doesn't move you, here she is with a child that seems to be dying, and then these people encased in Germany. You know, pretty art in Germany at that time wasn't even, you were getting bombed to death. You had the Holocaust, you had all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't really something that got into people's mind. These are two of my political pieces. They're both in iconography. One's called A House Divided, and one is called Zealot. And actually, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. If it does, I don't care. It was actually called American Zealot. So here it is, and it's a way of me speaking with some of the things I believe. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. I'm trying to just live within myself and what's going on today, and that's also part of art.
Armin, also, as far as it ties to the creative process, it's just another way to express yourself. And
Yes.
I love the multifaceted ways the creative process can work that way.
Well,
You,
both of these didn't start out saying, okay, I'm going to do one called The House Invited,
Mhm,
or Divided. I didn't start off with that. I started with abstracting. I built these figures as I built the other ones. I don't take photos of these. I build these figures,
mhm.
and then working about composition. And at some point, later into the piece, I understand the concept.
Mhm.
I
Can
find the
you, oh, go ahead.
no,
A quick question, because I know we're starting to get to the time here, but um, one of the artists wanted to know, could you summarize or provide the names of the German expressionists that you just showed? They're well worth a
uh,
study.
there was Kate Kollwitz,
Uh-huh.
Picasso, Otto Dix, and Max Beckmann.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay.
there's a lot more too.
Oh, yeah.
These are still the high players.
That would get you on your way, definitely. Thank you.
I also did political, social stuff. This one called the Holocaust. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Germany, and those bodies reminded me of the trees that I loved. And so I did this drawing called the Holocaust. Completely, everything's chopped off. Get rid of all of them, right? And then there's one hanging by a thread, your interpretation of it. So this was before iconography. I'm not saying I'm not going to do these kinds of things again, but you know, I I have to make
Right.
a living too.
Right.
Okay, here we're going to talk about concept. Again, the simplest of concept. The simplicity of these concepts is what makes them so great. The guy with the apple, nothing here was changed from the original photo. The guy with the apple took the core out and put a candle in, lit the candle, took the photo. The safety pins, the guy just bent those and put a little one in. What an amazing thing. What a wonderful thought process. And this other one was a pear cut in half and then with um, a match, I think he put in and put the one on the other so they balance. This is conceptual art. It's beautiful, but in the same sense, it's this. Now we all hate this, don't we? It's a damn banana. Anybody could have done it. Blah, 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 blah. Is it a great piece of art? No. But it's great in the annals of art. It's great about what is art, what's it supposed to be. So if I drew that for magically, it's different because I have the ability to draw something. This questions us. It's important. And, people don't talk about a lot of the realism that was in that show. They talk about this. It's not about a simple, my kid could do it. No, your kid couldn't do it, and neither could you, or else you would have. It's after all these years, somebody put something up like that and makes us all gas. And I spent hundreds of hours doing my watercolors, and this fool did this and that and the other thing. This stuff isn't new. It started in 1919 or 1917 with Deschamps. This was oh my God, you think the banana caused problems? This thing, and then he got so much involved in concept that he quit art together and played chess because that's true concept. Here's a couple things where you're dealing with abstraction in iconography. Here's one of Janice Taylor's, and here's one of mine, where I looked at these mechanical things and looked at the abstraction in them. Andrew Wyeth is I don't have a lot of artists that influence me except for maybe Franz Klein and Andrew Wyeth. Uh, there's others, but I'm more influenced by music. And people get influenced by them all the time. And now you have Andrea Kausch, Michigan artist, who's taken the basic theme and turned it into surrealism. I was in a show with her at the Grand Rapids Art Museum, and it's just amazing work. Just top of the line concept. Look at the concept here. The design goes back to Wyeth. And of course, the craft, she's very good at it. Another Andrew Wyeth, you know. So let's take the spirit of this piece. You have that tree up there, and you have that rock. That's basically what it's about. It's basically an abstraction. And then this is Val's abstraction, not from the Wyeth, but she has the same kind of feel into it in a different way. It's not about that place, it's about a sense of place. Another theme, personalities, Val Allen, first one, me, the second one, and Galen LaValle, the third one. And it was about, yeah, it was personalities. I took my grandmother and the 4 children she lost in World War II to bombs, right? And this shot by Galen is just, it's of her daughter, and it's a great shot. It doesn't always have to be over complex. I'm showing these 2 portraits because I thought they were very creative in the sense of putting some color in them. And then Casey takes some kind of solvent. When his piece is done, he sprays that solvent over that. Big gamble, but he does some great work. Both of these artists, I think, are wonderful. Well, in our iPhone class about 3 years ago, we had an assignment. Cindy, I don't know if this was the exact assignment, but it said do something different. And I completely went to this out of nowhere. I never really liked this kind of art before, but I wanted to I wanted to explore art I didn't like and create it. And it sent me on a whole new direction. This is the iPhone and this theme was the single most important thing. And this is by Carol Whitney, was her name? Yeah, Carol Whitney. And it changed me. So when I teach a class, the creative process, will something change you there? I like it this here. I've always been proud to engage and influence young people with my drawing. And this is this is the best picture. These kids are about as engaged. They're sitting on their phone, they're yawning, and behind it is somebody that worked 1,500 hours on a piece. So I think this is an excellent photo, and I use it quite a bit. We meet 6 times every other week. It's called a creative process. It's an assignment-based class. And here's one, and I taught this class live 20 years ago, and this will not be in there, but this was one of them. It's called Homage. And it's it's an homage about somebody that changed your life that could not be a family member. Because that's where you would go. Number one, do not share this with anyone else. Any visual medium you want to use, size is an option. It's up to you. And this would be in the class too. In this class, there are no limits and few rules. But when there are rules, follow them. Try to think around corners of the proverbial box. Most important question you can ask is what if? The person you are paying homage to cannot be a family member. It can be a group of people. Think and who changed your life in art, teaching, words, deeds. If it must be religious, fine, but be aware of the cliches and symbols that it would detail. Think about symbols, color, tools, composition, evoke emotion. This does not have to be a portrait at all. It can be a symbol in a classic sense. And that's how these classes went.